Hi, and welcome to the little apartment on the prairie. Today I'm going to can some water, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Now I know somebody's asking, why would you can water? Well, I want to be able to have water in jars that will be shelf stable, that I can keep, that'll stay fresh, potable, drinkable for several months. And then if 6 to 12 months go by and I don't need that water, I can use it to water my plants or do my laundry or whatever and refill up the jars so that the water stays fresh. But it's just like the same reason you would buy jugs of bottled water to have in the house in case of an emergency. Last year in Nebraska, where I live, we had a lot of flooding. It didn't affect me, but a lot of people in the state were unable to drink their tap water for a while. So I'm going to show you how to can water, and it's really easy and you don't need a lot of special equipment. The first thing you're going to need is a really big pot. Now, like this. This is a water bath canner. It's an enamel pot. It's made for canning things. There are different methods of canning things, and the method I'm using today is called water bathing. And all that means is that you put it in a boiling bath of water. But if you don't have a water bath canner, just use a big stock pot. I'm going to use that too, so I can can a lot of water at the same time. You just need a pot that's big enough that when you put your jars in it, let's see, I might have to do pints in this. Yeah, I'm going to have to do pints in this stock pot because it's not quite as tall as my water bather. You want to be able to fill up the pot so that the water is at least an inch over the tops of your jars. Okay, and you need lids for your pot. So a big stock pot. I got this from a friend. It used to be his spaghetti pot. I use it now mostly for making vegetable stock. Once in a while, make a big pot of chili in there. So then you're going to need canning jars, which you can get at the store. But you can also find them really cheap or free on Facebook Marketplace or local buy, sell, and trade groups, things like that. They do not need to be new. You want to check them to make sure you don't see any chips or cracks or anything. These are not new. I got these from somebody who was throwing out several boxes of them. Some of them had spiders in them. One of them, I think a mouse had made a nest in. It was gross. But I washed them, and I'm going to wash them now before I use them. So I'm just going to wash them in hot soapy water. If you have a dishwasher, throw them in your dishwasher and get them out while it's still hot. Now I'm just going to wash them and hot soapy water. Ouch, that's almost hot enough to burn my hand. I'm just going to wash them real quick in hot soapy water. And then I'm going to put them in some hot soapy water to rinse them. And that's it. Now you're going to need lids and rings, or some people call them bands. Canning lids are these flat lids that go on your jars. And then you have a ring that holds the lid in place. And this jar looks like it has something in the bottom still. I don't know what it is, but let's clean it really good. You want to clean it really good. You don't want to be sealing up any kind of dirt or germs or icky stuff in there, okay? So, come here, Isaac, do you need a treat? So, you are going to need new canning lids, a new box of lids. You can use used jars, you can use used rings on your jars, but you want new lids because they're going to seal better. Now, people used to think you had to boil your jars and boil your rings and boil your lids, and they no longer say you have to do that. So, here's some brand new, that's only one in this box, but I have more. I have some brand new canning lids. I'm going to use brand new canning lids. They're just flat round pieces. The bottom is what seals to the jar. And let's find rings. So then you have the ring. And you can use used rings. You can reuse those rings over and over again. The round lid goes on. Yeah, like that. Okay. The round lid goes on the jar. Then the ring goes on it, holds the lid on there. After you can whatever you're canning, in this case water, this lid's going to seal the lid's going to be stuck on the jar, and you're actually going to have to pry it off when you want it to come off. So you can store your canned goods without the rings if you want to. You don't need to keep the rings on there. Some people like to keep them on, some don't. You can do it either way. So the other piece of equipment that comes in really handy, but you don't have to have one, is this doohickey, which is called a jar lifter. And you use it to pick up jars. So when you go to put this jar in boiling water, you can lower it in with the jar lifter. The curved parts go around the jar. The handles is what you hold on here. The black part is what you're holding on to. You can get these for a couple bucks in any stores that sell canning jars, or you can buy them on Amazon. They're only a couple dollars. When you go to lift this out of boiling water, it's going to come in real handy because you're not going to want to stick your hand in the boiling water. If you don't have a jar lifter and don't want to go buy one, what you need to do is not fill up your pot all the way so that maybe the water will come up to, about here. That way you can hold the jar here, put it in the boiling water. Then you're going to have another pot with some boiling water in it, a smaller pot, and you're going to pour that boiling water into the canning pot until it covers up, about an inch over the top of this jar. When you go to get your jars out of the canner, you're going to need to wait and let it cool until it's cool enough you can stick your hand in there without burning off the skin of your fingers. Jar lifter comes in real handy, but you don't have to have it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our jars that have just been in hot water, just washed them, and I'm going to fill them up with really hot tap water. It doesn't have to be boiling. It's going to be tap water. It's just going to be as hot as, the tap water will get. It's hot. If I stick my fingers in it, it feels really uncomfortable. And I'm going to fill it up. I'm going to leave about an inch of space. On a lot of jars, you can kind of see there's like a rim or something around it, so I'm going to fill it up to there. And I'm going to leave about an inch of space, which is referred to as head space. I guess because it's the top of the jar. I don't really know. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a clean towel and wipe the top of the jar because I don't want it to be wet because my lid's going to stick better if it is dry. Now I'm going to put the lid on, and I'm going to tell you how to put it on so you know it's tight enough but not too tight. So you put the lid on. If you can hold on to the lid, you're going to put the lid on, and Ball Jar Company no longer says that you have to boil the lids or the rings, so I don't. You put the lid on, you're going to take the ring and you're going to hold it with one hand and set the jar on a towel. Do not hold the jar with your other hand. With one hand, put the ring on the jar, tighten the lid with one hand, as tight as it'll go, and then you get to a point where if I keep turning, the whole jar is going to turn, not just the lid. That's how tight you want it to be. They call that fingertip tight. I don't know why they call it that. Isaac needs a treat. But they call it fingertip tight, and that's how tight you want it to be because you actually want some air to escape. The air that's in that headspace in your jar is going to escape when the lid suctions on and seals. So you don't want the jar to be too tight. That could actually cause problems when you're canning. So my water's not quite boiling yet, but I can go ahead and I'm going to pick up this jar with my jar lifter. I'm going to set it into this pan of very hot water. I'm going to fill up a couple more jars. That'll start to boil. When it's boiling, I'm going to put the lid on the pot and I'm going to boil it for 10 minutes. Sassy, this kitten is going to be the death of me. She gets spayed in 1 week and I cannot wait. So I'm going to boil it for 10 minutes. You want to bring it to a really good vigorous boil before you put the lid on it. Put the lid on it, boil it for 10 minutes. If you forget what you're doing and you accidentally boil it for, a couple minutes extra, that's not going to be a big deal. It's just water. It's hard to mess it up, right? Put the lids on. Got some bands. If you buy new canning jars, they'll come with lids and bands. If you get used ones, you'll have to buy the lids and bands separately. Most of my canning jars are at least 50 years old. I think these that I'm using right now were made sometime between about 1930, it might be 1932, and 1960, something like that. You're just going to lift it in. My pot's almost a little bit too full. Okay. I'm boiling over just a little bit. And my stove's a mess. I'm going to have to clean it when I'm done. So I'm going to bring it to a good boil, and then put the lid on it, and we'll wait 10 minutes, and I'll show you when we take them out. Alright, it's almost time to take some jars of water out of the canner, and I want to show you, I'm going to put them here on my table, and I have these quilted mats I made to put canning jars on when I take them out of the canner, and I found that I didn't make them thick enough, and there's some marks, I don't know if you can see it, where it damaged my table where I had hot jars on a folded towel or on this quilted mat, and it still messed up my table. So I double them up or put an extra towel on top because you're putting a very hot jar down there and it can screw up your table or your countertop. You want to put them in a place where you can let them sit for a few minutes undisturbed. So now if you've got your jar lifter, remember if you don't, you're going to have to turn off the boiling water and let it cool enough that you can get your hand in there to get your canning out. The lid's going to be hot, the handle's going to be hot. Use a towel or a pot holder. And you're going to very carefully use a jar lifter. These are pints that are coming out now. My quarts are going to come out in a minute. The quarts especially are going to be heavy, so you might want to have a hand with a towel underneath it. Did you just hear that ping? That means it's sealed. Listen when I take the next one out. I hope you can hear it on the video. Sometimes it takes several minutes before you hear it, but it makes this little ping, and it's that seal popping. And I'll show you how to tell if it's sealed good or not in a minute. Alright. So I'm going to put some more jars in there in a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and take these quarts out too. They're going to be heavier, and I don't want to get splashed with boiling water. I'm going to put this towel under, ouch, and I still burned my finger. So kind of give me a little extra support so I don't drop a glass jar of boiling water. This is a good time to keep the kids and the cats and the puppies out of your kitchen so they're not in your way or under your feet making you drop things. Alright, and we're going to leave them sit there I'm going to leave them there till like tonight or tomorrow morning and just leave them alone. And then I'll check and make sure they sealed. You hear that one ping? Let me show you something I've canned that's sealed. This is some applesauce I made. I had apples in my freezer from back in the fall, and I made this a couple days ago. When I push on this, it doesn't move. It doesn't flex. You don't hear a noise. That means it's sealed. I can also wiggle this a little bit, and it doesn't move. You're going to have to pry that open to get it up. Now, let me show you. Hear another ping? Let me show you a jar that's not sealed, so you can see the difference when you push on it. So I've just put the ring and lid on this jar. It's not sealed. Listen, look, I can push it. I can push it. Here, it pops. The lid flexes up and down. If your jar does that after you've taken something out of the canner, and I'm not going to test it again for a few hours, I'm going to let it sit there and cool off. But if your lid flexes like that, what you just canned, it's not sealed. With water, it just means I'm going to pour it out and reuse the jar. If you're canning something else, you're not going to want to eat it because your food's not going to, it's not preserved. Your food can go bad. All right, so I'm going to get some more water in the canner, and then I'm going to sit down and talk to you for a minute and tell you how much water I'm planning to can and how come. Okay, my canning is done for today, and I just thought I'd fill you in on how much water I want to can. The current recommendations are that, you know, to prepare for emergencies or something, people should have 1 gallon of water per person per day. And the Red Cross recommends that we have enough food and water to take care of ourselves for 3 days. I don't think 3 days is enough. Hi, sassafras. That's my kitten. I don't think 3 days is enough. I know last year here in Nebraska there was flooding, and I'm pretty sure some parts of Nebraska, not where I live, but other parts were without any running water for more than 3 days. I'd say at least a week, probably longer in some areas. Anyway, the recommendation that I've heard is that 1 gallon per day is for healthy people, but that if you get sick, you should have 1.5 gallons because you may need to drink extra fluids, plus you may need extra water for washing up and stuff. So right now with the coronavirus and everything that's going on, I'd like to have 1.5 gallons per day for myself. You also have to think about water for your pets. So I want to have 1 gallon for my dog. I'm not sure that he'll go through 1 gallon in a day, but you know, if there's extra, that's fine. But that's what I want to have. And I think 1/2 gallon for both cats will be sufficient because they're small and they don't drink that much. So that comes out to 3 gallons a day for my household because I'm single. And if you've got a family of 4, you'd be looking at like 4 gallons a day at least, maybe 6 gallons a day. Anyway, so if I look at 3 gallons a day, that means I would need 21 gallons to last a week. Now, it'd be great if I could store a month's worth of water, but I don't know where the heck I would put 84 gallons of water in my apartment. It's just not that big. And you may have that issue too. If you've got a family of 4 or even more, I mean, 4 people, if you're looking at 6 gallons a day, that'd be 42 gallons just for a week. I don't know where you're going to put, you know, it depends on your storage and your house and everything. But anyway, for me, my goal right now is I'd like to have 21 gallons of water stored. So today I canned 7 quarts and 6 pints. A pint is 2 cups or 16 ounces. A quart is 4 cups or 32 ounces. It takes 4 quarts to make 1 gallon, or 8 pints to make 1 gallon. So I canned 2.5 gallons today. So I've got a long way to go, but that's kind of what my goal is. You probably have other water, or not water, but other fluids in your house to drink. You know, if you've got milk or juice or whatever in the fridge, that counts. If you've got some bottled juice or some soda in your pantry, that counts. You know, that's fluid. If you've got broth or soup in the pantry, that's liquid. I've got a whole bunch of vegetable broth that I made and canned. And then, you know, there's liquid. If you open up a can of fruit, it's in some juice or some liquid. You open up a can of carrots or green beans, there's liquid in there. I don't really think about, hey, I'd like to sit down and drink some green bean water. It's in the can, but you know, that is liquid that if things were desperate and you had no running water, you could drink that. Now, your gallon or 1.5 gallons a day, that counts for washing up, for cleaning, for bathing, for everything. So, you know, you're going to do a little bitty sponge bath, wash your face and, you know, any smelly areas or whatever. You're obviously not like taking a bath or a shower in 1 gallon of water. But you may need to wash up some dishes or something too. And obviously you're not going to wash your dishes or yourself in soda or orange juice, but those would be fluids that you'd also be drinking. So I've got some of these other liquids in the house that I'd be drinking, but I definitely want to have the water for emergencies. And I'm just going to put, you know, I've got all these jars up on top of my shelves like this, and so I think I'm just going to put jars of water up there. And that's where I'm going to put some of it. I may put some of it in like a shallow tote under my bed. I think the quarts would fit under my bed. Definitely the pints would. I could just have a whole, you know, some kind of a container or a box of pints of water under my bed. And I'm going to label them all with the month and the year, which is how I usually label my canning. And then sometime before the year is up, any unused jars of water, I'll open and I'll use the water for something. I'll water plants, or I'll do laundry, I'll wash the floor, or whatever. But, you know, then I'll reuse the jars. Let me know if any of you can water and how much you try to keep on hand for your family. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up and subscribe to this video. And if you hit the little bell, then you'll get notifications when I post more.